The champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. Every conversation in the ballroom died mid-sentence. All eyes turned to Marcus Dante, the man they whispered about in back rooms, the man they called the Reaper, standing frozen, staring down at the little girl with the bald head and tears in her eyes. Her small voice had just asked him one question. One impossible question that cracked through 25 years of steel and ice like it was nothing. And what he did next, no one in that room would ever forget it. Stay with me until the end, because this story will shatter you in ways you never saw coming. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. It's a glittering Saturday evening in downtown Chicago, 2024. The Belmont Grand Hotel's Crystal Ballroom, Marcus Dante's carefully chosen territory. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Seven-figure donations announced with restrained applause. Champagne towers. Hushed conversations about portfolios and political favors. But this isn't just another charity gala. This is where Chicago's most powerful people conduct business behind the mask of philanthropy. Where criminals and CEOs shake hands and smile for cameras. Where everyone understands the unspoken rules. You make your appearance. You write your check. You keep your secrets to yourself. And you never, ever ask questions. Marcus Dante stands near the bar, a monument to controlled power at 48 years old. His Tom Ford suit costs more than most people earn in 6 months. His steel gray eyes sweep the room with the precision of a man who survived by noticing everything: the exit routes, the faces that don't belong, the conversations that stop when he walks past. For 2.5 decades, Marcus has built an empire that stretches across 3 states, ruling Chicago's underworld with surgical precision. His nickname wasn't given by friends. The Reaper was earned through cold calculation and ruthless enforcement. He ended the Romano family war in a single night, made 5 rival bosses vanish without leaving bodies to find. His word is law. His mercy is non-existent. And his philosophy has kept him alive when better men died. Emotion is weakness. And weakness gets you killed. But Marcus Dante has one rule he never breaks: he doesn't attend events where children will be present. The annual Children's Hospital Gala is his single exception: appearance only, strategic donation, exit before the kids arrive. Children are triggers. They remind him of things buried so deep that even thinking about them makes his chest tighten. They remind him of the daughter he lost, of the father he used to be, of the night 25 years ago when everything that mattered turned to ash and blood. Tonight, though, a business conversation runs long. A politician needs reassurance. A deal needs finalizing. And Marcus's carefully timed exit, the one that always gets him out before the special guests, portion of the evening, gets delayed by 15 minutes. 15 minutes that will shatter everything Marcus Dante has built to protect himself. Marcus checked his watch for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. 8:47 p.m. The children from the hospital were scheduled to arrive at 9 o'clock, which meant he had exactly 13 minutes to wrap up this conversation, make his donation, and disappear into the night like he did every year. 13 minutes to maintain the careful distance he'd spent 25 years constructing between himself and anything that reminded him of small hands and innocent laughter. Mr. Dante, I just need 5 more minutes of your time. Congressman Robert Mitchell's voice carried the particular desperation of a man who owed more than he could pay. The politician's forehead glistened with sweat, despite the ballroom's perfect climate control. The vote is coming up next week, and if certain people start asking questions about the waterfront development contracts, then you'll handle it the way we discussed. Marcus's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of finality. He didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. 25 years of ruling Chicago's underworld had taught him that true power whispered while weakness shouted. You've been paid well enough to know how to redirect inconvenient inquiries, Robert. Or have you forgotten who secured your last 3 elections? The congressman's face went pale. No, of course not. I just wanted to make sure we're aligned on the talking points. If we're aligned. Marcus's steel gray eyes fixed on Mitchell with the kind of attention that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other obligations. But as Marcus turned toward the exit, Vincent Marcello materialized at his elbow, his second-in-command's expression carrying the particular tension that meant problems. Real problems. Vincent had been with Marcus for 18 years, long enough to know that his boss's strict timeline for this event was non-negotiable, which meant whatever brought him over here was serious enough to risk the Reaper's displeasure. "Boss, we've got a situation." Vincent's voice was low, meant only for Marcus's ears. "Tommy Rizzo just called. The Castellano crew made a move on our South Side operations. Hit 3 of our collection points in the last hour." Marcus felt something cold and familiar settle in his chest. Victor Castellano. The name alone carried 25 years of accumulated rage, carefully stored and precisely measured like ammunition, waiting for the perfect shot. The old bastard had been quiet for months, which meant he'd been planning something. Testing boundaries. Seeing if the Reaper's legendary patience had any limits. "Casualties?" Marcus asked, his voice betraying nothing of the calculation already running through his mind. "2 of our guys roughed up pretty bad. Tommy wants to retaliate tonight. He's got the crew ready to move, just waiting for your word." Marcus glanced at his watch again. 8:52, 8 minutes until the children arrived. 8 minutes to make a decision about a conflict that had been building for months. The smart play was to leave now, handle the Castellano problem from his office, where he could think clearly, plan precisely, respond with the methodical brutality that had kept him alive and in power for 2.5 decades. But Tommy Rizzo was young, hungry, and exactly the kind of enforcer who interpreted hesitation as weakness. If Marcus walked away now without giving clear orders, Tommy might take initiative. And initiative from men like Tommy usually meant bodies and complications. "Tell Tommy to stand down," Marcus said, already calculating the angles. "No retaliation until I've assessed the situation personally. We don't move until we understand what Castellano is actually doing here." "This could be a feint," Vincent nodded, pulling out his phone to relay the orders. Marcus turned back toward the exit, but his path was suddenly blocked by Catherine Ashford, the hospital's development director. Her practiced smile, bright enough to power the chandeliers. "Mr. Dante, I'm so glad I caught you." Her enthusiasm was genuine, which somehow made it worse. "The children will be arriving any moment, and they're so excited. We told them about your generous donation, and several of them made cards to thank you personally. Would you mind staying just a few minutes too? I'm afraid I have urgent business that requires my immediate attention." Marcus's tone was polite but immovable. He'd perfected this exit strategy years ago. Polite enough to avoid offense, firm enough to prevent negotiation. "Of course, I understand completely." Catherine's smile dimmed only slightly. "But perhaps just one quick photo? It would mean so much for our fundraising materials next year." And the ballroom's main doors opened. Marcus's entire body tensed, an involuntary response he couldn't control even after all these years. He didn't need to turn around to know what was happening. He could hear it in the sudden shift of the room's energy, in the way conversations changed tone. In Catherine Ashford's delighted gasp, the children had arrived early. Marcus moved toward the side exit with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd mapped every escape route in the room within 5 minutes of arriving. 3 more steps and he'd be clear. 3 more steps and he could maintain the careful separation between Marcus Dante, the crime boss, and the ghost of the father he used to be. "Marcus, there you are." Douglas Whitmore's booming voice cut through the gentle applause, welcoming the children. The real estate mogul was one of the evening's platinum donors, the kind of man whose handshake came with expectations and whose offenses couldn't be ignored without consequences. "I've been looking for you all evening. We need to discuss the River North property before the zoning hearing." Marcus's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Douglas was legitimate money, old Chicago wealth that did business with Marcus's organization without ever acknowledging what that organization actually did. Snubbing him would create complications that would ripple through several carefully maintained business relationships. "Douglas, I'm just leaving 5 minutes. That's all I need." Douglas had already positioned himself between Marcus and the exit, his jovial smile masking the steel underneath. "The hearing is Monday, and if we're not aligned on our approach to the alderman, the whole deal could collapse." Behind them, the children were spreading through the ballroom like dandelion seeds on the wind. Small voices, light footsteps, the sound of wonder as they took in the crystal chandeliers and elaborate decorations. Marcus felt his chest constricting, that old familiar pressure that made it hard to breathe. He focused on Douglas's face, on the business discussion, on anything except the memories trying to claw their way up from the places where he'd buried them. The alderman is already secured, Marcus said, his voice tight. Your concerns are premature, yes, but if the neighborhood coalition raises objections, a small voice interrupted them. Excuse me, sir? Marcus looked down and felt his entire world tilt sideways. The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her head was completely bald, the smooth scalp catching the chandelier light in a way that somehow made her dark eyes look even larger. She wore a simple blue dress that hung loosely on her thin frame, the kind of careful clothing choice that spoke of a mother trying to maintain normalcy in impossible circumstances. But it was the bracelet that stopped Marcus's heart. Silver chain, butterfly charms, delicate wings in shades of blue and purple and pink, catching the light with every small movement of her fragile wrist. Identical to the one Isabella had worn every single day until "I'm sorry to bother you," the little girl continued, her voice soft but clear. I thought you were someone's grandfather. You just looked like someone who might understand. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't move. 25 years of carefully constructed armor. And this child had found the crack in less than 5 seconds. Lily, sweetheart, don't bother the guests. A nurse in colorful scrubs moved toward them, apologetic smile already forming. But the little girl Lily ignored her. My nurse, Patty, said people at fancy parties have usually lost someone they loved, Lily said, tilting her head with that particular way children have of seeing straight through adult pretenses. She said that's why they give money to hospitals. Because they remember. Douglas had fallen silent, clearly uncomfortable with the turn the conversation had taken. Vincent had materialized nearby, hand instinctively moving toward his jacket, as if threats could be neutralized with weapons. But Marcus barely registered their presence. He was trapped in those large brown eyes, in the butterfly bracelet, in the innocent question forming on this dying child's lips. So I wanted to ask you something, Lily said, her small hand reaching out to touch his sleeve with the same unconscious trust Isabella used to show strangers. If you could go back and have one more day with someone you lost, what would you say to them? The champagne glass slipped from Marcus's hand. The sound of crystal shattering on marble was deafening in the sudden silence. Every conversation in the ballroom stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned toward the corner where Marcus Dante the Reaper, the man who'd never shown weakness, never displayed emotion, never let anyone see past the ice, stood frozen, staring at a bald little girl with butterfly charms on her wrist. Marcus's lips moved, but no sound came out. His steel gray eyes, the ones that had stared down killers and politicians without flinching, were suddenly bright with something no one in this room had ever seen before. Lily looked up at him with concern, not fear. I'm sorry, she whispered. Did I say something wrong? 25 years ago, Marcus Dante knew how to laugh. He could still remember the exact sound of it. Echoing through Lincoln Park on a Sunday morning in May, Isabella had been 6 years old, wearing her favorite sundress, the white one covered in purple butterflies, and dragging him by the hand toward a patch of wildflowers where a monarch had landed. Daddy, look how pretty. Her voice had been breathless with wonder, those dark curls bouncing as she jumped up and down. Can we catch it? I just want to hold it for a minute. I'll be really, really gentle. Marcus had knelt beside her in the grass, his expensive suit be damned, and whispered instructions on how to cup her hands just right. Remember, baby girl, we're not trying to trap it. We're just asking if it wants to say hello. The butterfly had landed on Isabella's palm for exactly 3 seconds before flying away. But the look on his daughter's face, pure magic. Untainted joy had stayed with Marcus for hours afterward. Days. He'd carried it with him into meetings with dangerous men, into negotiations that could turn violent with one wrong word. That memory had been his anchor, reminding him what he was really fighting for, who he was protecting. Daddy, you're the strongest man in the whole world, Isabella had told him that night at bedtime, her small hand patting his cheek with the absolute certainty only children possess. You know why? Why's that, Principessa? Because you protect people. That's what makes someone strong, not being mean or scary. Protecting the people you love. Marcus had kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, and promised her something he'd meant with every fiber of his being. I'll always protect you. Always. 3 weeks later, he'd started his car in the driveway of their home in Oak Park. The bomb had been sophisticated, professionally installed, triggered by the ignition. Marcus had survived because Isabella had forgotten her butterfly bracelet on the kitchen counter and run back inside to get it. Maria, his wife, had gone with her. They were 15 feet from the car when it exploded. 15 feet. The difference between everything and nothing. Marcus had crawled from the wreckage with a perforated eardrum and second-degree burns. He'd stumbled toward the house, toward the screaming, toward the sight that would destroy him more completely than any bomb ever could. Isabella had been standing in the doorway, the butterfly bracelet clutched in her small fist, staring at the flames with an expression Marcus would see every time he closed his eyes for the next 25 years. Not fear, not yet, just confusion. The innocence breaking in real time. Daddy? Her voice had been so small. Daddy? Why did our car explode? Maria had grabbed her, pulled her back inside, called 911, but the damage was done. Victor Castellano's message had been received. Loud and clear. Nothing you love is safe. The second bomb had been in the house. Smaller. Precisely placed in the hallway closet. Time to detonate exactly 12 minutes after the first explosion. Long enough for emergency responders to arrive. Long enough for Marcus to get inside. Long enough for his family to think they were safe. Isabella had died instantly, they told him later. Maria had lingered for 3 hours in the hospital before her injuries proved too severe. Marcus had held his wife's hand as she died, listening to her final words. Don't let this make you into something she wouldn't recognize. But he had. God help him, he had. The funeral had been closed casket. Isabella in her white dress with the purple butterflies, the one she'd worn in the park that Sunday morning. The butterfly bracelet had been too damaged from the blast to bury with her, so Marcus had kept it, carried it in his pocket every day for 6 months, until the weight of it became unbearable, and he'd locked it away in a safe he never opened. The cemetery. Standing between two small graves, Marcus Dante had made a vow that would define the next quarter-century of his life. Never again. Never again would he be weak enough to love something that could be taken. Never again would he show the vulnerability that had painted a target on his family. Never again would he be anything except what his enemies feared most. Sentiment was weakness. And weakness got the people you loved killed. Marcus had walked away from those graves as someone else entirely. The father had died with his daughter. What crawled out of that cemetery was something colder, harder, more efficient. Something without mercy or hesitation. Something they would come to call the Reaper. Marcus hadn't slept in 3 days. He sat in his office at a.m. The city sprawled dark and glittering beyond his window, staring at the file Vincent had compiled. The folder was thin, 8 pages total, but it contained everything there was to know about Lily Chen and her mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, everything except the answer to the question that had been echoing in Marcus's head since Saturday night. What would you say to them? Lily Chen, age 8, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, diagnosed 14 months ago. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper as he read aloud to the empty room. Mother, Sarah Chen, 36, pediatric oncology nurse at Children's Hospital. Father, David Chen, deceased 3 years ago. Construction accident. No other living relatives. The details painted a picture Marcus didn't want to see, but couldn't look away from. A widow and her dying daughter, facing the impossible alone. Sarah worked the same hospital floors where her child received treatment, watching other people's children while her own slipped away. The cruelty of it was almost elegant in its precision, but it was the next section of the report that had kept Marcus awake for 72 hours straight. Subject: observed writing extensively during hospital stays. Vincent's notes read in his characteristic efficiency. Per hospital staff interviews, patient is composing letters to her mother. Content unknown, but nurses report she's been working on them for approximately 4 months. Refuses to let her mother read them. Says they're for after. Marcus's hands had trembled when he'd first read those words. They were trembling now. Letters. For after. He'd made a call that same night, trading favors. He'd been saving for more important things, calling in debts from people who worked at Children's Hospital. By Tuesday morning, he knew what was in those letters. Not from reading them, he wasn't that far gone yet, but from the nurse who'd seen Lily writing them. Patty Rodriguez, 58 years old, 29 years in pediatric oncology. The kind of woman who'd seen enough dying children to recognize when one was saying goodbye. She's teaching her mother how to live without her, Patty had told Marcus's intermediary, her voice breaking over the phone line that had been recorded and transcribed. Instructions on how to make her favorite recipes, because Sarah always burns them. Reminders to water the plants on Tuesdays. Permission to fall in love again. An 8-year-old child giving her mother permission to be happy after she's gone. Marcus had destroyed his office after reading that transcript. Overturned his desk, shattered a window, put his fist through the wall. Vincent had found him sitting in the broken glass, bleeding from his knuckles, staring at nothing. "Boss, you need to walk away from this," Vincent had said quietly. "This isn't our world. This isn't our fight." But Marcus couldn't walk away. Not from those letters. Not from that question. What would you say to them? On Wednesday evening, Marcus found himself in the children's hospital parking garage, sitting in a car that cost more than most people's houses, watching the entrance like a common stalker. He'd told himself he just needed to see her one more time, confirm that she was real, that the moment in the ballroom hadn't been some grief-induced hallucination. He'd told himself a lot of lies in the last 3 days. Lily appeared at p.m., being wheeled through the lobby in a wheelchair by her mother. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the butterfly bracelet catching the fluorescent lights, could see the canvas bag in Lily's lap, probably filled with those impossible letters, could see Sarah's exhausted smile as she leaned down to say something that made her daughter laugh. Marcus followed them inside, keeping his distance, moving through the hospital corridors like a ghost. He'd spent 25 years learning how to be invisible when necessary, how to observe without being observed, how to hunt. But he wasn't hunting. Now, he didn't know what this was. The pediatric oncology ward was on the 4th floor, painted in cheerful colors that couldn't quite disguise the underlying reality of what happened here. Marcus watched from the visitors' lounge as Lily was settled into her room. Watched as Sarah checked the 4 lines with the practiced efficiency of a nurse who'd done this 1,000 times. Watched as Lily pulled out her letters and continued writing, her small hand moving carefully across the page. And then Lily did something that made Marcus's chest constrict so tightly he thought he might be having a heart attack. A little boy in the next room started crying. Marcus could hear it through the walls, the kind of desperate, terrified crying that came from pain no child should understand. Sarah moved to check on him, but Lily was faster. She climbed out of her bed, dragging her 4-pole behind her, and went to the other child's room. Marcus moved closer, staying in the shadows, watching through the doorway. "It's okay," Lily was saying, sitting on the edge of the boy's bed. "I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But you know what helps me." The boy shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I think about butterflies," Lily said softly. "How they start as caterpillars and have to go into this dark cocoon where it probably feels scary and lonely. But then they come out beautiful and they can fly. We're kind of like that right now." Marcus watched this dying child comfort another dying child, and saw Isabella in every gesture. The gentle hand on the shoulder, the patient voice, the instinct to protect, even when you were the one who needed protecting most. "Daddy, you're the strongest man in the whole world. You know why? Because you protect people." Marcus turned and walked away before anyone could see. The Reaper crying in a children's hospital hallway. The doctor's hands were shaking badly enough that Marcus almost felt sorry for him. "Almost. Mr. Dante, I appreciate the generous offer, but what you're asking is impossible." "Doctor?" Raymond Pierce sat across from Marcus in the back room of a restaurant that didn't officially exist, sweating through his expensive shirt despite the air conditioning. "The FDA hasn't approved CAR T-cell therapy for pediatric leukemia patients with Lily's specific markers. The clinical trials are years away from." "I'm not asking about FDA approval." Marcus's voice was quiet, reasonable, the tone that made smart people very nervous. "I'm asking if the treatment exists, if it works, and if it can be acquired through alternative channels." Pierce swallowed hard. He was one of the country's leading oncology researchers, a man whose work Marcus's people had been tracking for the last week, a man who also had gambling debts that would destroy his career if they became public. A man who understood exactly what kind of alternative channels Marcus Dante controlled. "The treatment exists," Pierce admitted finally. "There's a facility in Switzerland conducting private trials. Results have been promising, but the cost alone, money, isn't a concern." Marcus slid a folder across the table. "Here's what I need: complete treatment protocol, timeline, equipment requirements, personnel, and absolute discretion." Pierce opened the folder, his eyes widening at the figure written on the first page. "Enough money to clear his debts 10 times over and fund his research for the next 5 years. This is for one patient?" Pierce's voice was barely audible. "One patient. 8 years old. Running out of time, Marcus leaned forward slightly. And doctor? If word of this reaches anyone, the hospital, the media, anyone, the next conversation we have will be very different. Pierce nodded, his hands still trembling as he closed the folder. I'll need 2 weeks to make the arrangements. You have one. Vincent was waiting in the car, his expression carefully neutral in the way that meant he was deeply troubled. They'd been having this same conversation, in various forms, for 6 days now. Boss, we need to talk about the Castellano situation, Vincent said as Marcus slid into the back seat. Tommy's getting restless. The crew wants to respond to last week's hits, and they don't understand why you're holding them back. They're starting to ask questions. Let them ask, Marcus. Vincent rarely used his first name. When he did, it meant he was speaking as a friend, not just a lieutenant. People are talking. The Reaper spending his nights at children's hospitals, throwing money at experimental medical treatments. Tommy told me this morning that some of the younger guys think you're going soft. Tommy should focus less on what I'm doing and more on following orders. That's the problem, boss. They're wondering why the orders changed. Vincent's voice carried genuine concern. You've spent 25 years building a reputation, making people believe you're untouchable, that nothing moves you except business and revenge. And now you're risking all of that for a kid you barely know. Marcus stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, the city he'd controlled through fear and precision for 2.5 decades. Vincent was right. Everything Marcus had built was predicated on the belief that he was something other than human, something that couldn't be threatened or influenced or manipulated through emotion. And now he was dismantling that carefully constructed image for an 8-year-old girl with a butterfly bracelet. People can think what they want, Marcus said finally. The treatment moves forward. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? And I need you to be honest with me. When have I been anything else? Is this about saving that little girl? Or is this about the daughter you couldn't save? Marcus's jaw tightened. The answer was both. The answer was neither. The answer was that for the first time in 25 years, he'd felt something other than rage and emptiness. Watching Lily comfort that crying boy, seeing her write those impossible letters, hearing her ask that devastating question, it had cracked something open inside him that he'd thought was sealed forever. It doesn't matter why I'm doing it, Marcus said. It only matters that it gets done. It matters if it gets you killed, Vincent shot back. Victor Castellano is watching you, waiting for weakness. And you're giving him exactly what he needs to make his move. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo one of his people had taken at the hospital. Lily in her room, writing her letters, that butterfly bracelet catching the light. He showed it to Vincent. You see this child? Marcus's voice was rough. She's dying, Vincent. And instead of being scared or angry or falling apart, she's writing instructions to teach her mother how to be happy without her. 8 years old, and she's braver than every man in our organization combined. Vincent stared at the photo, his expression softening slightly. Isabella would have done the same thing, Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Would have spent her last days trying to take care of everyone else. And 25 years ago, I couldn't protect my daughter from men who used her to get to me. But maybe he stopped, the words catching in his throat. Maybe I can protect this one, even if it costs you everything? Marcus thought about the question Lily had asked him. What would you say to them? He thought about all the things he'd never gotten to say to Isabella, all the promises he'd made and broken, all the years he'd spent being the Reaper instead of being a father. Yes, he said finally. Even then, Vincent sighed, recognizing the futility of further argument. Okay, boss. But when this blows up, and it will blow up, I'm going to remind you that I warned you. Noted. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Pierce. The treatment had been arranged. Everything was in place. All they needed now was time. Time, and for Lily Chen to survive long enough to receive it. Marcus looked at the photo one more time before putting his phone away. For the first time in 25 years, he was terrified of losing someone, which meant, for the first time in 25 years, he was actually alive. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday morning, pulling Marcus from the first real sleep he'd managed in weeks. Boss. It's Sal. The voice on the other end carried the careful excitement of a man delivering news he knew would change everything. We've got him. Victor Castellano. Next Friday night. His lake house in Wisconsin. Confirmed. Marcus sat up in bed, suddenly, completely awake. You're certain? Positive. Our guy inside his organization says Victor's taking a personal trip. No business, no meetings. Just him and 2 bodyguards at the estate. It's his granddaughter's wedding on Saturday. He's going up early to clear his head before the family arrives. Sal paused. Boss, this is it. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. 25 years, 9,125 days since Victor Castellano had ordered the hit that killed Isabella and Maria. Since he'd turned Marcus Dante into something that only resembled a man. Since he'd created the Reaper, Marcus had spent every single one of those days preparing for this moment, planning, waiting, building the power and resources necessary to do what needed to be done without starting a war that would consume the entire city. Victor had been too well protected, too paranoid to careful. His security was legendary, his movements unpredictable, his paranoia about assassination attempts bordering on pathological. But even the most careful men had weaknesses. And Marcus had been patient enough to find them. Send me everything, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through his veins. Property layout, security details, access points, timelines. I want it all in my office in 1 hour. By a.m., Marcus's office looked like a military operations center. Satellite images of the Castellano estate covered one wall. Security patrol schedules, guard rotations, and electronic surveillance systems mapped out with the precision of a surgical strike. Vincent and Sal stood by while Marcus studied every detail with the focus of a man who'd been waiting his entire adult life for this moment. The lake house was isolated, sitting on 40 acres of private waterfront property. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. The 2 bodyguards Victor was bringing were competent but predictable. Marcus had files on both of them dating back years. They followed established patterns, made routine mistakes, trusted technology over instinct. Optimal entry point is here. Marcus indicated a section of the property that bordered state forest land. We go in after midnight, when the guards do their final perimeter check. There's a 12-minute window before they cycle back to the house. And Victor? Vincent asked quietly. Will be in his study. He always is on Thursday nights, calls his daughter in Italy, has his nightcap, reviews his week. Marcus's voice was emotionless, clinical, but his hands gripped the edge of the desk hard enough to turn his knuckles white. We take the guards first. Clean, quiet, then I handle Victor personally. Sal and Vincent exchanged glances. They'd been with Marcus long enough to understand what personally meant. This wouldn't be a quick hit. This wouldn't be professional. This was going to be about 25 years of accumulated rage finally finding its release. Timeline? Sal asked. We move at 12:30 a.m., in and out in under 30 minutes. The body won't be found until the family arrives Saturday afternoon, and by then it'll look like a heart attack. Natural causes. No war, no retaliation, just an old man who died in his sleep. Except Victor Castellano wouldn't die in his sleep. He would die looking into the eyes of the man whose family he'd destroyed, finally understanding that some debts could never be escaped, only delayed. Marcus pulled out a locked drawer in his desk and removed a photograph he hadn't looked at in years. Isabella, age 6, wearing her butterfly sundress, laughing at something just outside the frame. He'd taken this picture 3 days before the bombing, 3 days before everything ended. This is for you, baby girl, Marcus whispered, his finger tracing the edge of the photo. I told you I'd always protect you. I failed then. But this I can do. This I can finish. Vincent cleared his throat carefully. Boss, there's one thing we need to consider. What? The timing. Next Friday is also when Dr. Pierce said the treatment window opens for the Chen girl. The experimental therapy, it has to be administered within a specific time frame or the opportunity closes. Marcus looked up sharply. How specific? Friday night. Between PM and PM. That's the optimal window for the procedure to work. Vincent's expression was carefully neutral. The equipment arrives that afternoon. The medical team Pierce assembled will only be available for that one night. If we miss it, the treatment can't happen for another 3 months, and Lily doesn't have 3 months, Sal added quietly. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. After 25 years of waiting, his revenge and his redemption were scheduled for the exact same night. We'll make both work, Marcus said, though even to his own ears the words sounded hollow. The hit takes 30 minutes. We can be back in Chicago by PM if everything goes according to plan, and if it doesn't. Vincent pressed. If there are complications? If the guards aren't where they're supposed to be? Or if Victor has additional security we don't know about? Boss, you know better than anyone that operations like this never go exactly according to plan. Marcus stared at the satellite images of the lake house, then at the photo of Isabella, then at the file on Lily Chen that sat on the corner of his desk. 25 years of rage on one side, a dying 8-year-old girl on the other. We have a week to refine the plan, Marcus said finally. By Friday night, there won't be any complications. But as Vincent and Sal left to begin preparations, Marcus remained alone in his office, staring at the two paths laid out before him. Revenge or redemption, the past or the future. The father who'd failed his daughter, or the man who might save someone else's, for the first time in 25 years. Marcus Dante wasn't certain which choice the Reaper would make. The call came at 6:47 p.m. on Friday evening. Just as Marcus was loading the last magazine into his Glock, Sarah Chen's voice was barely recognizable through her sobs. Mr. Dante, I'm so sorry to call you like this, but I didn't know who else Lily's crashing. Her counts dropped catastrophically this afternoon. Dr. Pierce says if we don't do the treatment tonight, within the next few hours, she won't survive the weekend. Marcus closed his eyes, the gun heavy in his hand. Through the phone, he could hear hospital sounds, urgent voices, machines beeping, the controlled chaos of people trying to save a life that was slipping away. The treatment is ready, Sarah continued, her words tumbling over each other. The equipment, the medical team, everything you arranged. It's all here, Doctor. Pierce says the window is 8 p.m., just like he told you. But Mr. Dante, her voice broke completely. She's asking for you. She keeps saying she needs to tell you something before the treatment, in case it doesn't work. I know you're busy. I know this isn't your responsibility. But please, I'll be there. Marcus heard himself say. The words came out before his brain could engage, before logic could intervene. He ended the call and stood in his armory, surrounded by enough weapons to start a small war, staring at the tactical gear laid out on the table. His team was already in position, waiting 40 miles north at the staging point. Victor Castellano was at his lake house, probably pouring his evening whiskey, completely unaware that tonight was supposed to be the night he paid for what he'd done. 25 years ago, 25 years, Marcus picked up the photograph of Isabella he'd placed on the armory table that morning, his good luck charm, his reminder of why Victor Castellano needed to die. What do I do, baby girl? He whispered to the image. Tell Daddy what to do. But Isabella just smiled. Her gap-toothed smile, frozen forever at age 6, wearing her butterfly dress and her innocence like armor that had failed to protect her. His phone buzzed. Vincent. Team in position. Target confirmed at location. Awaiting your arrival. ETA? Marcus's finger hovered over the keyboard. One word, proceed, and Vincent would lead the team in. They were good enough to do it without him. Not with the same personal satisfaction, not with the same poetic justice of Victor Castellano dying at the hands of the man he'd destroyed, but they could get it done, except that wasn't the plan. This was supposed to be Marcus's moment, his revenge, his closure, another message, this time from Dr. Pierce, patient stable for now, but deteriorating. Treatment must begin by p.m. sharp. After 8:30, risks increase exponentially. After p.m., likelihood of survival drops below 40%. Please advise. Marcus looked at his watch. 7:02 p.m., the drive to the hospital would take 25 minutes in current traffic. The drive to the staging point in Wisconsin would take 90 minutes, putting him there at 8:30 right in the middle of Lily's treatment window. Too late to make the p.m. start time that would give her the best chance of survival. He couldn't do both. 25 years of waiting, of planning, of building himself into something strong enough and cold enough to finally take what was owed. All of it came down to this impossible choice. Marcus walked to the wall safe and entered the combination with muscle memory. Inside, wrapped in cloth he hadn't touched in decades, was Isabella's butterfly bracelet. The one that had been too damaged to bury with her. The one he'd locked away because the weight of it was unbearable. He unwrapped it slowly, the delicate silver chain and shattered butterfly charms falling across his palm. Some of the butterflies were missing wings, others were bent beyond recognition, but he could still see what it had been, what she had been. His phone rang again. Sarah Chen, her voice rising with desperation. Mr. Dante, please. She's asking for you. She says she needs to tell you what you should say to them. She says she figured out the answer to her question and she wants you to know before a sob cut off the rest. Marcus closed his fist around the broken bracelet, feeling the sharp edges bite into his palm. Daddy, you're the strongest man in the whole world. You know why? Because you protect people. Isabella's voice, clear as the day she'd spoken those words. Not a memory, something deeper. Something that lived in the part of him that had survived when everything else died. That's what makes someone strong. Not being mean or scary. Protecting the people you love. Marcus opened his hand and looked at the broken butterflies. At the daughter he couldn't save. At the father he used to be, before grief had calcified into rage. Vincent called. Boss, we need to move. Guards just started their rotation. If we're doing this, it has to be now. Marcus looked at the gun on the table, at Isabella's broken bracelet, at the tactical gear, waiting to transform him back into the Reaper one final time. Stand down, Marcus said, his voice rough, silence on the other end. Then, boss, say that again. Stand down. Abort the operation. Bring everyone home. Marcus Vincent's voice carried shock and something else. Concern. Are you sure? This is Victor Castellano. This is what we've been waiting for. I know what it is. Marcus set the gun down on the table with careful precision. And I know what I'm choosing. He ended the call before Vincent could argue further, stripped off the tactical gear, and grabbed his car keys. As he headed for the door, he took one last look at the armory at 25 years of preparation now gathering dust. I'm sorry, he whispered to the ghost of the father he'd been, to the daughter who'd believed he was the strongest man in the world. I'm sorry I can't be what you needed me to be back then. But maybe I can be what she needs me to be now. Marcus walked out of the armory, leaving the Reaper behind in the darkness. He had a little girl with a butterfly bracelet waiting to tell him what he should have said to the people he loved, and for the first time in 25 years, Marcus Dante was going to listen. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He sat in the hospital parking garage at 7:34 p.m., the engine still running, phone buzzing with increasingly urgent messages from Vincent. Boss, where are you? We need you here. Marcus, Castellano is alone. Guards are exactly where we predicted. This is perfect. We can't hold position much longer. Please respond. One call. That's all it would take. Tell Vincent to proceed without him, then go upstairs to Lily. He could still have both revenge and redemption, the past and the future. His team was good enough. They could finish what he'd started. Except they couldn't. Not really. Because this had never been about Victor Castellano dying. It had been about Marcus being the one to kill him. About looking into the old man's eyes and making him understand, finally, what he'd taken. What he'd destroyed. It had been about the son of a bitch knowing exactly whose hand was ending his life, and if Marcus wasn't there, if he let someone else pull the trigger, then 25 years of rage would remain unfinished, unresolved. The ghost of Isabella would still be waiting for justice that never quite arrived. Marcus pulled Isabella's broken bracelet from his pocket and laid it on the dashboard. The shattered butterflies caught the harsh fluorescent lights of the parking garage, their bent wings casting fractured shadows. Tell me what to do, he whispered. Please, baby girl, tell Daddy what you'd want. But he already knew. He'd always known. You're the strongest man in the whole world, Daddy. You know why? Because you protect people. Not because he killed them. Not because he made them suffer. Because he protected them. Isabella had never asked for revenge. In all her 6 years, she'd never wanted anyone to hurt on her behalf. She'd cried when Marcus had to set mousetraps in their house because she didn't want even mice to suffer. She'd made him promise to always give money to homeless people because everybody deserves help, Daddy. She'd believed, with the absolute certainty only children possess, that her father was good. That being strong meant being kind. That power was only worth having if you used it to protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. And Marcus had spent 25 years becoming the exact opposite of everything his daughter had believed he was. His phone rang. Not Vincent this time. Sarah Chen. Mr. Dante. We're prepping Lily now. Doctor. Pierce needs to start the treatment in 15 minutes. Are you? Her voice cracked. Are you coming? Marcus looked at Isabella's bracelet one more time. Then he picked it up, closed his fist around it, and made his choice. I'm on my way up, he said. Tell Lily I'll be there in 5 minutes. He ended the call and immediately dialed Vincent. Boss, thank God. We're ready to move. Just give the word, stand down, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the way his heart was hammering against his ribs. Abort the mission. Bring everyone home. That's an order. The silence on the other end stretched for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Marcus, Vincent's voice was gentle, the way you'd speak to someone standing on a ledge. This is Victor Castellano. This is Isabella. This is everything we've worked for. Everything you've lived for. Are you absolutely certain? Marcus thought about his daughter in that hospital doorway, confused and innocent, clutching her butterfly bracelet as their world exploded. He thought about the funeral, about the vow he'd made, about the 25 years he'd spent being something Isabella wouldn't recognize, and he thought about Lily Chen, 8 years old, dying in a hospital bed, using her last days to write letters, teaching her mother how to be happy without her. Killing Victor won't bring Isabella back, Marcus said quietly. I've known that for 25 years. I needed to believe the revenge would fix something, fill the hole she left. But it won't. It never will. Then what will? Vincent asked. Marcus looked toward the hospital entrance, where somewhere on the 4th floor, a little girl with a butterfly bracelet was waiting to tell him what he should have said to the people he loved. Maybe nothing fixes it, Marcus admitted. Maybe I'll carry this hole for the rest of my life. But Isabella, my Isabella, she believed I was the strongest man in the world because I protected people. Not because I killed them. Not because I made them suffer. Because I protected them. He could hear Vincent breathing on the other end, processing. There's a little girl upstairs who's going to die tonight if I'm not there, Marcus continued. And I have the power to save her. The resources, the connections, the money, everything I built on Isabella's grave can actually do something good for once. Can actually protect someone instead of destroying them. And Victor? Marcus felt the rage flare one final time, that familiar, comfortable anger that had kept him warm for 2.5 decades. It would be so easy to hold onto it, to tell Vincent to proceed, to choose the past over the future. Victor Castellano is a 71-year-old man whose granddaughter is getting married tomorrow, Marcus said, the words tasting like ash and freedom simultaneously. His family will arrive at that lake house in the morning, and he'll be there to walk her down the aisle. He gets to have what I never did. He gets to see his family grow up. That's not justice, boss. No, Marcus agreed. But maybe it's mercy. And maybe that's what Isabella would have wanted me to choose. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. You know this changes everything, right? Word gets out that the Reaper went soft, that you chose a dying kid over revenge, then let it get out, Marcus interrupted. I'm done being the Reaper, Vincent. I'm done being the thing that Isabella's death created. I want to be the man she believed I was, the father she deserved. Even if it's 25 years too late, what do you need from me? Marcus felt something in his chest crack open, not breaking, but opening. Like a door that had been sealed shut, finally letting in light. Get the team home safe. Make sure Victor doesn't know how close he came tonight. And Vincent? Marcus paused. Thank you. For everything. For 18 years of loyalty. For following me into hell and back. But mostly for trying to stop me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Boss Marcus, you're still going to catch heat for this. Tommy and some of the younger guys, they're not going to understand. Then they don't have to work for me anymore. Marcus was already getting out of the car, heading toward the hospital entrance. Anyone who has a problem with the direction I'm taking can walk. No hard feelings. No consequences. This is my choice, and I own it completely. He ended the call and walked through the sliding doors. Isabella's broken bracelet clutched in his hand. Upstairs, a little girl was waiting to teach him what he should have said to the people he loved. And Marcus, Dante, not the Reaper, just Marcus, was finally ready to listen. Marcus had arrived at the hospital room at 7:52 p.m. that Friday night, 8 minutes before Lily's treatment window opened. She'd been so small in that hospital bed, her bald head resting against white pillows, the butterfly bracelet catching the harsh fluorescent lights. But when she'd seen him, her face had lit up with a smile that reminded him so much of Isabella it had physically hurt. Mr. Marcus, she'd whispered, her voice weak but determined. I figured out the answer to my question. What question, sweetheart? What you should say to them. To the people you lost. Lily had reached out with one thin hand, and Marcus had taken it, sitting carefully on the edge of her bed. You should tell them that they made you better. That even though they're gone, They're still teaching you how to be the person they believed you could be. Marcus had felt something break open in his chest, not the violent shattering of that night 25 years ago, but something gentler. Like ice finally melting after a long winter, the treatment had lasted for hours. Marcus had stayed for every minute, holding Sarah's hand when she couldn't stop shaking, talking to Lily when she was scared, being present in a way he hadn't allowed himself to be for anyone in 2.5 decades. And when Dr. Pierce had finally emerged at 1:30 a.m. to say the words cautiously optimistic, Marcus had walked out to his car, sat in the darkness, and cried for the first time since Isabella's funeral. 6 months later, Marcus stood in Sarah Chen's modest backyard, watching Lily, no longer bald, her dark hair growing back in soft curls, blow out 9 candles on a birthday cake decorated with purple butterflies. The party was small. A few kids from her class, Nurse Patty, Dr. Pierce and his wife, Vincent and his family. Not the kind of gathering Marcus Dante typically attended. But then again, Marcus Dante wasn't quite the same person he'd been 6 months ago. Make a wish, baby girl, Sarah called out, her face radiant with the kind of joy that only comes from watching your child survive the impossible. Lily closed her eyes, thought for a long moment, then blew out all 9 candles in one breath. When she opened her eyes, they found Marcus immediately, and she smiled, that same smile that had first cracked his armor in a ballroom 6 months ago, after the cake. After the presents, after the other guests had started to leave, Lily approached Marcus with something hidden behind her back. Mr. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything, sweetheart? Mama told me about your daughter. About Isabella. Lily's voice was gentle, careful. Would it be okay if we visited her? I made something for her. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He looked at Sarah, who nodded with understanding in her eyes. I'd like that very much, he managed. Oak Hill Cemetery was quiet on Sunday afternoon, the autumn leaves creating a carpet of gold and red across the grounds. Marcus led Lily and Sarah to a section he hadn't visited in years, couldn't visit, because seeing Isabella's name carved in stone made everything too real. But today, with Lily's small hand in his, he found the strength. Isabella Marie Dante, beloved daughter, 2018 to 2024. Our brightest butterfly. Lily knelt by the headstone, pulling out a sheet of colorful butterfly stickers from her pocket. Carefully, reverently, she began placing them on the stone. Purple butterflies, blue ones, pink ones with glittering wings. Hi Isabella, Lily said softly. My name is Lily. I'm friends with your daddy. He saved my life, and I think maybe you had something to do with that. Marcus knelt beside her, one hand on the cool marble of his daughter's grave, the other still holding Lily's hand. Baby girl, Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry it took me 25 years to come back here. I was so angry, so lost. I thought being hard and cold and scary would protect me from ever hurting like that again. But all it did was make me into someone you wouldn't recognize. Sarah stood back, giving them space, tears streaming silently down her face. But then you sent me an angel, Marcus continued, looking at Lily, a little girl with a butterfly bracelet and a question that tore through everything I'd built to protect myself. And she reminded me who I was supposed to be. Not the Reaper, not the monster I became, but the father who protected people. The man you believed was the strongest in the world. Lily leaned against Marcus's shoulder, still carefully placing stickers on the headstone. I can't bring you back, Marcus said to Isabella. God knows I'd trade everything I have for one more day with you. One more butterfly hunt in the park. One more bedtime story. One more chance to tell you how much Daddy loves you. But I can't have that. All I can do is try to honor the person you were. Try to be the father you deserved, even if it's too late for you to see it. He pulled out Isabella's broken bracelet from his pocket, the one he'd carried for 6 months. The one that had helped him choose life over revenge that Friday night. Gently, he laid it at the base of the headstone. I'm giving this back to you, Principessa. You can have your butterflies back, because I don't need to carry broken things anymore. He looked at Lily, whose hair was growing back in those same dark curls Isabella had once had. I get to help whole things grow instead. Marcus didn't see the black car parked 3 rows away, or the elderly man watching through tinted windows. Victor Castellano had come to visit his wife's grave. She'd been buried here 15 years ago and had spotted Marcus Dante, his greatest enemy, kneeling at a child's grave, with tears streaming down his face. Victor watched as Marcus stood, taking the little girl's hand and the woman's hand, walking away from the grave together. Watched as Chicago's most feared crime boss smiled at something, the child said. Watched as the Reaper chose life and laughter over death and revenge, and Victor Castellano, who had survived in their brutal world for over 50 years, understood something in that moment that made his blood run cold. Marcus Dante had become more dangerous by choosing mercy than he'd ever been by choosing violence. Because a man with nothing to lose was predictable, but a man with something to protect? That man was capable of anything. Victor made a mental note to leave the Dante organization alone. Permanently. As they walked back to the car, Lily looked up at Marcus. Mr. Marcus, do you think Isabella likes the stickers? Marcus squeezed her hand gently. I think she loves them, sweetheart. Almost as much as she loves knowing that her daddy finally figured out what she was trying to teach him all along. What's that? That the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who break and choose to heal anyway. Sarah wiped at her eyes, overwhelmed by the impossible beauty of this moment, her daughter alive, laughing, growing. And the man who'd saved her, finally finding peace with the daughter he couldn't save. 6 months ago, a little girl with a butterfly bracelet had asked a Mafia boss one question. A question that shattered 25 years of carefully constructed armor. A question that destroyed the Reaper and resurrected Marcus Dante. If you could go back and have one more day with someone you lost, what would you say to them? Now, walking away from Isabella's grave with Lily's hand in his, Marcus finally had his answer. He'd say, "Thank you for making me better. Even in death, you're still teaching me how to be the man you believed I could be. And I promise I won't waste that gift." The smallest voice had broken the hardest man, and in breaking him, had made him whole again. Sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't revenge, it's choosing to protect instead of destroy. It's choosing life over death. It's choosing to be the person someone you loved, believed you could be, even when they're no longer there to see it. Marcus the Reaper Dante learned that lesson from an 8-year-old girl with a butterfly bracelet, and in learning it, he finally became the father his daughter had always known he could be. Thanks for staying with me until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that even the hardest hearts can choose to heal. Comment below and tell me, what would you say to someone you lost if you had one more day? Until next time, remember the strongest among us aren't those who never break. They're the ones who break and choose love anyway.